you grew up in Marietta, Georgia, which is right outside of the Atlanta area. We know a lot of great athletes come out of the Atlanta area. When you were coming up, was track and field a big thing in the Atlanta area?
There were a bunch of, like, youth clubs all around the area. My dad actually still coaches his youth club, the Heat Track Club, in Marietta. But I didn't necessarily grow up a track fan. I mean, I started running when I was 7, but prior to that, I had no idea, like, what track and field even was. I just kind of stumbled upon it, I guess. My parents saw that I had some talent and I could run pretty quick, so they found a program for me. But that's when I really started to, like, know track and field and track clubs and what track meets were. But, yeah, there were definitely a lot of youth clubs for sure around the area.
Awesome to hear. Now, I want to ask you, when you got your feet wet into the sport, who were some of the people that you looked up to in track and field to find out who would you model your style after?
Well, I mean, I guess an obvious one would be Jackie Joyner-Kersee, but that didn't come about until my later years. I think when I was younger, I was just running and having fun and hanging out with my friends, and it was just very casual. It didn't really start to become serious for me until I got closer to high school and through college. But definitely when I started the multi and picked it up and learned more about it, Jackie Joyner-Kersee has always been an idol of mine, and she actually reached out to me when I was competing at the Olympics, and sometimes she'll just, like, shoot me a text if, like, something big is happening. And so she's just been a really nice person, a really nice contact to have, and a really nice person to look up to. I mean, obviously, she's a great heptathlete and then also a great person as well. So for a long time, she's probably been that person that I've looked up to for sure.
Oh, wow, that's awesome to hear. That's definitely greatness right there with Jackie Joyner-Kersee. And so let's move on now to your career. In high school, you set a U.S. junior record in the heptathlon at the 2012 IAAF World Junior Championships in Barcelona, and you also earned Athlete of the Meet honors, and certainly you continued to win numerous championships in 2013 at the New Balance Nationals in New York City, followed by the USA Junior Championships and the Pan Am Junior Championships, and not just doing your thing on the track, but also you did your thing in the education world. You graduated with a 3.75 grade point average, Cal High School. So you definitely were a jack of all trades, not just in track and field, but in the classroom as well. And you also were a member of the National Thespian Society. So tell me, well, during your high school track career, was your father influential in building up your career? Did you have other coaches besides your father to help you along the way?
Yeah, so my dad was my coach up until college, so 7 years old up until when I went into college. But he wasn't a high school coach. Like I said, he has his own separate nonprofit youth club. So I did have my high school coach when I was going through those 4 years, and so I would do my high school practice, and then in the evening go out and do my dad's practice as well. So yeah, he was definitely influential throughout my entire high school experience. He's actually the one that suggested that I even do drama class, and that's how I ended up in the Thespian Society, because you do a certain number of plays and stuff, and I actually really enjoyed it. So yeah, my dad has always been right there helping me figure out my next steps, and been a support system even now.
Well, speaking of plays, what were some of your favorite plays that you enjoyed doing in high school?
Ooh, let's see. The Craving it's a play called The Craving, and it's like a play that I did, I believe it was senior year, and I think that's my favorite because I was one of the lead characters.
Okay.
And so it's basically, The Craving is like a play within a play. And so I played the director in the play. I don't know, it's just it's a funny play. And so I actually still have the script at my parents' house because I loved it so much. But what the thing was, I was only in drama class. I wasn't in the drama club. because of track practice. So I could only do, like, the drama class during the day, and the class itself would just put on, like, little plays within the classes, but the drama club was, like, an entirely different thing that I wish I could have done. But so these were just, you know, little plays that I've done. I think I've been maybe in, like, 3 or 4, but the Craving was definitely my favorite.
Okay, awesome. And then definitely your varied high school experience helped you to transition into the next journey in your life, which was college, and you attended the University of Georgia, and you blew it out the water at Georgia. What was your major during your time at Georgia?
I was advertising.
Okay, what attracted you to the field of advertising?
Well, in the beginning, it was the major that I didn't have to take a lot of math classes.
Okay.
If I'm being honest, I hate math. And so I was like, okay, that's
at least you're being honest about it, you know?
I have to be so honest. But when I got into the major, well, and let me take a step back. I knew that I think creatively, and, you know, I know that I can, you know, work really well in a group and bring ideas. And so that part fit with advertising. And so when I just didn't know what the major would really entail. But when I got into the major and I saw how much research goes into advertising, and then I got to work a little bit with the creative part. My senior year, we got to work on, well, junior and senior year, we got to work on businesses in Athens. So, like, the owner of, like, a local Athens business came to our class, told us what she needed, and we spent the entire semester, like, you know, building a campaign based on, you know, what she needed and the direction she was trying to go, and actually got to pitch to her and said, you know, if you like any of these ideas, like, feel free to take them. And then senior year, we actually worked on something for Zaxby's. And so just kind of getting those experiences were really cool, and I just got to learn so much about the advertising industry that I had no idea. You know, I just thought, oh, okay, a commercial on TV, or, like, something that pops up online, or, you know, but now I know why those commercials are on certain TV programs, or why that particular ad is popping up in front of your computer screen, but maybe not someone else's. And so it's just kind of interesting to see the different types of ads, the informational ads versus the ads that are just there to remind you about the product based on where it is in the life cycle. So I don't know. I became such a advertising nerd, I guess, as I progressed through the major.
That's interesting that you bring up advertising, and again, you really don't know a lot until you really dig deep into a specific concentration or a major or anything. And it's good that you've learned the differences and still learning about it. I want to ask you, has your advertising degree, has it helped you in a sense in terms of your track and field career, in terms of endorsements, or just possible attraction to endorsement deals?
I think it's definitely helped me learn, like, how, I guess, to market myself. I mean, in advertising, you know that social media is king right now, and so a lot of companies are, you know, moving to digital, and so that's kind of the same thing. You know, you see a lot of track athletes now posting workouts, trying to connect with fans, just really building their social media, because it is a way to gain endorsements and products. I have to admit, I'm not great with social media. I mean, like, I post occasionally when something big is happening, but I do have friends that have really made a point to really grow their following and to build their brand for the purpose of attracting brands to their social media. And so I've seen it being done, but I think for me, it's just like I just have the knowledge of, like, how to do it, but then I'm too, like, I don't know, shy or whatever to actually get out there and post as frequently, or, you know, to actually do what it takes. But you definitely see everything being on social media now for companies and for athletes as well.
Okay, awesome. We're going to get back to track and field and the University of Georgia in just a moment, but I want to talk about two events that you specialize in, and that's the Heptathlon and the Pentathlon. For our audience out there that may not be familiar with, can you explain what the difference is between the Heptathlon and the Pentathlon?
Yes. So the Pentathlon is 5 events, and at my age now, it's only contested during the indoor season, and so it's the 60-meter hurdles, high jump, shot put, long jump, 800, and it's all in one day. And then the heptathlon is outdoors, and that's 7 events, and so it's all of the same events in the pentathlon, the hurdles, the high jump, long jump, 800, but we add the javelin, which is a throwing event, and then one more running event. We add the 200.
You mentioned that the pentathlon is 5 events and it's indoors and it lasts all day. How many days does the heptathlon last? 1 day, or does it last several days?
Oh, it's over 2 days. So the first 4 events are on day 1, and the last 3 events, which is long jump, javelin, 800, are on day 2.
Okay, fair enough. Now, okay, cool. So now was this an event that you, with the pentathlon, were these events that you gravitated towards early into your track and field career, or did you do other events before those 2?
I did other events. When I first started track, I did, like standing. I was 7, so I did standing long jump. I ran the 100. Ran the 200, and then as I progressed, I started to run the 4, and, I sprinkled in some field events here and there. And then when I got to be, 11 or 12, my dad realized that I'd already pretty much done, I'd already been hurdling, I'd already had experience with long jump, high jump, and so when you're younger, the pentathlon is all that there is. So he's like, well, okay, she's already hurdling, already high jumping, and doing the long jump. I just have to teach her how to throw the shot put, and then convince her to run the 800, and then we've got the pentathlon. And so that's kind of what happened. We just started to experiment with the pentathlon, realized that I had some success in it, and then kind of just kept going from there in the multi-events. And so as you get older, the pentathlon changes into the heptathlon outdoors. And so that's kind of how it started. It just kind of snowballed. I realized that I was doing a lot of the events already, so we just decided to, okay, what does it look like when we put these all together? And that's how it started.
Awesome to hear. Now, what do you consider to be your best events in these competitions?
For sure. Just because I think I've worked the longest on those. And then it's just my favorite event. It's like a quick event. It's short. It's the first event. So, yeah, by far the hurdles, and then the long jump would probably be number 2 out of the 7.
All right, awesome to hear. Now let's transition again back to your college days at the University of Georgia, and you did some amazing things at the University of Georgia. Again, you were an All-American. You were a 7-time NCAA Division I champion. You were also a U.S. Track and Field and Cross Country Coaches Association All-American, and you definitely did your thing at the University of Georgia. What was your the collegiate experience like for you in Athens?
It was great. My older brother, he was at UGA a year before I was. He's a year and a half older than I am. So we got to do the experience together, and I think that's what made it all the more special. We're an hour and 30 minutes from home, so our parents could always, come up, and then our parents are super track family anyway, so they would travel everywhere with us, and it was nice that they could just wear one college. It wasn't like they had to split the t-shirt in half and have school over here and my school over there. So it was cool that they got to just cheer on Georgia, and the team was great. My coach Petros was great. I mean, I think he's really what I needed to kind of take my talent to the next level. He brings a lot out of me and all of the athletes in his group. And so I was just pushed harder than I ever thought I could go, push farther than I ever thought I could go, and then I had way more success than I ever thought I would have. If somebody would have told me that I would have won 7 individual NCAA titles and, broken records and won awards, I would have been you're joking. You're absolutely joking. So it was just an incredible experience. UGA is a great university, and I had a lot of fun. Definitely a really great 4 years.
That's wonderful to hear. And then I'm looking at your stats right here, and you were the NCAA indoor champion in the pentathlon in 2014, 2015, 2016, and 2017. So you did your thing. And then in the heptathlon, you were the 2014, 2016 NCAA outdoor champion, and you were also the heptathlon SEC outdoor champion in 2014. And then you were the SEC indoor champion in the pentathlon in 2015, 2016, and 2017. So you definitely made the most out of your time at the University of Georgia. Who were some of your, I know that the SEC, we know about the pedigree of the SEC when it comes to football, but track and field is no slouch by any words of the imagination. We know about schools like LSU and Auburn and Mississippi State and Vanderbilt and Alabama. During your time at UGA, who did you consider to be some of your toughest rivals?
Well, that's an easy one because we still go back and forth to this day. Her name was Erica Bogard, and she went to Mississippi State, so she's right there in the SEC. So we would always, run head-to-head at SEC championships, at NCAAs, and we would go back and forth. I think she's a year or two older than I am. So that was fun. I would say she was and still is my biggest rival, but yeah, everybody, there's a lot of talent in the SEC. That's why I wanted to go to school in the SEC. I wanted to be where the talent is, and so there's so many great competitors across all the events, across all sports in the SEC. So it was fun. It was very competitive, but it was fun.
All right, awesome to hear. And during your time at the University of Georgia, you won the Honda Sports Award as the nation's best track and field competitor in 2017. And you racked up some other awards as well during your time at Georgia. You were the SEC Female Athlete of the Year, and you really did your thing at Georgia, racking up the Honda Sports Award, and then you became the SEC Female Athlete of the Year. And, you had a lot of competition. Just kind of talk about those experiences of receiving those prestigious awards.
It was incredible, because a lot of the time I didn't really even know that those awards existed, so it wasn't like I came into college chasing the Honda Sports Award. I didn't know what the Honda Sports Award was until they told me that I won it, and I was like, that's incredible. So it was just such a blessing to know that people were recognizing like the work that I was putting in and that it was paying off. Because, as a multi, we're like beating our bodies up, 6 days a week, sometimes twice a day. And so, it's just nice that the work was paying off and everybody loves to be recognized. So it was nice to win an award and know that, like, out of everybody that's working hard, like, they decided to, select me to win the award, and it was just really special. All of them are super special, and so they're all really special to me. They're all really, cool awards, and, just put the icing on the cake for my experience at Georgia, for sure.
Rightfully so, and then you definitely was the icing on the cake during your time in Athens. And also just want to mention to the audience out there that you, in 2013, you were voted the Gatorade Gatorade High School Girls Track and Field Athlete of the Year. So definitely you were recognized nationwide and by a big company like Gatorade. So kudos to you on that one as well.
Thank you.
I want to talk. You're welcome. And then let's talk about your Olympic experience. You were a member of the 2016 United States Olympic Track and Field team that competed at the Olympics in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. The Olympics is a global party. The whole world is watching. What was that experience like, just being at OlympicStadium with the whole world just fixated on not just you, but just all of the athletes, and just what was that response like?
It was amazing. That entire experience, from the moment that I realized I made the team all the way up until I was done competing. I mean, the whole experience was just incredible. I don't know how many times I just stopped and said, I can't believe this is happening. Like, I can't believe that I'm an Olympian. Like, I can't believe that I'm at the Olympics. Like, I don't know. It's just I kept repeating it to myself in it. But yeah, it was just such a cool experience because it's something that, you dream about for a long time. And, it's who knows if you're ever going to get there. I mean, the U.S. Olympic team is like, probably the hardest team to make. And so, there's so many talented athletes that may never have even made an Olympic team. So just the fact that I was able to make the team compete, it was just such an awesome experience. And as a junior in college, too. So, sometimes when you go to your first Olympic trials, you just kind of go there to get your feet wet. And so to be able to have gone there, my first one, make the team, it was awesome. And there were so many people from Georgia that made it to the Olympics. I mean, we had some swimmers that went, and then my coach Petros had a whole gang of athletes that was there. So it was really nice to make the team with other people that you are already familiar with, because it kind of just helped you relax a little bit. But the experience was crazy, just knowing, walking in the opening ceremony, just knowing people are watching all over the world and that you're literally on the biggest stage right now. It was just so cool. And I just couldn't wait to, after it was over, and actually it was funny because I was still in school, so me and my roommate, who's a triple jumper, Katura Orji, we flew back right after she was done competing, so we didn't even stay the duration of the Olympics because we came back for class, and then when we got back, we were like, our professors probably would have understood if we just stayed at the Olympics, so we decided to come home.
Well, you mentioned that you and your roommate flew back immediately after she finished the competition. Did you have an opportunity during your time to take in the culture of Rio, or was it just a business trip for you?
I didn't do much just because of a lot of the stuff that they had going on at the time. They didn't advise us to really leave, the base. So they didn't really advise us to go out and do a whole lot of exploring. So I did go and see some other sports compete, because track and field wasn't at the very, very beginning of the Olympics. So I did get to go see weightlifting. I saw some gymnastics. I saw some water polo. So I did go and watch other events, but I did not really go and explore outside of the Olympic Village.
Okay, fair enough. Now, let's stay with Rio for a moment. You competed in the heptathlon, and certainly your fellow teammates was BarbaraNwaba and HeatherMillerKoch. I hope I'm pronouncing her last name right. What was it like having teammates in Barbara and Heather?
Oh, it was awesome. I met Barbara at World Indoors in 2016. We were on the Portland team together. So that's the first time that I met her. So I already knew she was a super nice girl, super talented. And then Heather, I think the trials were maybe the first time I met Heather, but again, super nice, super hardworking. And so when we made the team together, I was actually so tired after the competition, after the 800, that the two of them were essentially holding me up for the interview because, after we finish, they usually have someone at the finish line, interviewing people after races before we take our victory lap. So the two of them held me up to do the interview, and then basically carried me around the track for the victory lap. So I knew competing with them was going to be great, and it was. And they're still so nice. Yeah, I'm excited. They're great competitors, and it was a really good experience.
The games in Rio were marred by the Zika crisis. I wanted to ask you, did the U.S., the United States Olympic Committee, or maybe the International Olympic Committee, or better yet, did the United States Track and Field Association make any preparations with you and the other athletes in terms to prepare for the Zika crisis that had taken place in Brazil?
Yes, and so let me try to see if I remember this correctly. I know we were packing our suitcases just in case, and I think they had the option to test before and get some sort of injection before or something before you go over there. I can't remember, but they definitely had precautions. They gave you a bunch of safety information, and this is with every trip. You kind of look at all the details about where you're going. But yeah, for the Zika thing, they definitely had all the information. I believe in the village they were spraying to try to calm down all of the possible mosquitoes or whatever. So I didn't see anything it to me. It didn't look out of control, or I didn't even. Had you told me that there was a Zika crisis, I wouldn't know, having been in the village, because I think they did a really good job. And then the U.S. was very prepared. Obviously, they have like team doctors and stuff on staff who are knowledgeable about everything that's going on with every country that Team USA goes to. So they were definitely prepared for the crisis.
All right, well, that's great to hear. And it's great to have an insight from an Olympian. Track and field is a sport that's dependent heavily on not just professional athletes earning their money at meets, but also with endorsements. Do you have any endorsement deals?
So my sponsor is Nike. I'm fortunate enough to have a sponsor, but that's not the case for many track and field athletes. Many track and field athletes don't have a shoe sponsor, and so they might try to find, another sponsor with like maybe a recovery drink or like a power bar or something. So yeah, it's definitely not like easy to get a shoe sponsor in the track and field world, but I am fortunate enough to be with Nike. So
awesome. Explain how the pay scale works when you're getting paid at track meets. Do athletes get paid? I mean, with what you do in the pentathlon and the heptathlon, do you get paid if you get finish in the top 3, or do you finish in the top 5? How does it work how does the payment work in terms of your events?
So usually I will only do 3 heptathlons a year, which will be an opening meet somewhere. It's usually this meet called Gotzis. It's in Austria. And then I'll do the U.S. trials, and then if there's a World Championships or Olympics, so those are my 3. And at those meets, they pay top 8 prize money and descending. So, your first place will start at, X amount, and then it'll just, decrease from there through 8th place. But 8 places do get something. Now, in between there, I'll do smaller meets around Europe. And in those meets, I'll just compete in an open event like the hurdles, or I'll just go over there and long jump or something. And so those meets can depend. Some meets will pay top 8. Some will pay top 3. It just kind of depends on, I guess, the size of the meet. But the bigger meets like the Olympics and Worlds pay top 8.
Okay, that's interesting. I was always curious about the pay scale in track and field and how athletes get paid in meets. I wasn't sure if you guys got paid or maybe in the top 3 or top 5 or dependent upon the event. That's interesting right there. I know you have some familiarity with Eugene, but just got to tell the listeners out there what the experience was like competing out there in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, well, this is different because I haven't been to Eugene since they redid the stadium. And so, I mean, that stadium is state-of-the-art. It is gorgeous. And it reminds me of a lot of the stadiums I've competed in overseas, like in Europe and stuff. And so it was an entirely different energy competing there. It was great. The track is still fast. So it was good. And obviously the U.S. Olympic trials is super competitive. People's dreams are coming true or people's dreams are falling apart. So it's extremely stressful. But extremely rewarding at the end, especially if, you're one of the ones that, has a good performance or makes the team. And so fortunately, I was one of the ones that was celebrating at the end of the week. U.S. Olympic trials, well, the U.S. Olympic team is the hardest team in the world to make.
What type of adjustments did you have to make to battle the extreme heat that was taking place in Oregon? Yeah,
it was extremely hot. But on the 2 days that the heptathlon was going on and some of the finals for the other events, it was a record high that as far as the heat temperatures in Oregon. So it got up into the hundreds on Saturday and then up to 115, I believe, on Sunday, which is the day that we have the long jump javelin 800. So it was definitely extremely hot the first day. And then we got into day 2 and the temperatures went well over 100. I mean, fortunately they had ice towels for us and, tents for shade. And then we were just, trying to put back as much water and electrolytes as possible. But then, eventually we had some people, we had a girl in the heptathlon actually faint during our event when we were warming up for the javelin. And so I think that kind of really brought it to the people's attention that, hey, maybe it is too hot. These people have been out here for hours competing under this heat. And so that's when they delayed it for about 6 hours after the javelin. So we had completed the javelin, and so there were 6 hours before our last event, which was the 800. So kind of thankful, though, for the break, just because, obviously we were really depleted by that point. So that 6 hours of break allowed us to go back in, some air conditioning, rehydrate, refuel, and then come back later in the evening where the temperatures were a little bit cooler. Still warm, but a little cooler.
Well, good. I'm glad you guys were able to resume the competition. And again, as they always say, you have to be very careful when you're dealing with extreme weather conditions, especially when you're dealing with extreme heat. I want to stay with the Oregon heat for a moment. Was there any differences between an Oregon heat and a Georgia heat?
I will say Oregon felt a little bit more dry. Like Georgia is, very humid, hot, whereas Oregon felt like dry heat. So to me, it felt a little bit better than if it were to be 115 degrees in Georgia. But, the hydration and stuff is still the same. I mean, I don't know how many bottles of water I went through and bottles of electrolytes, Gatorade. So I definitely had to be just as prepared to deal with that heat and compete in that heat as I would in Georgia. But to me, I think being from the South definitely did help because I am used to, competing and training in really hot weather. So compared to maybe people in up north, cooler areas, I think being from the South, I guess, was a little bit of an advantage, but it was hot for anyone, no matter where you came from.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, no matter how well conditioned you are, you can't beat Mother Nature in some cases. Can you explain to the listeners about how a point system works in the heptathlon?
I can try. It is very complicated. So the running is worth more than the jumping, and the jumping events are worth more than the throwing. How it's all weighted, I'm not sure. There's a book, and there's different apps that can explain how all of it is weighted. But you definitely want to do well in the hurdles, in the 2 jumping events, and the running. And then if you can throw something well, it should be the javelin, because I think those events, those 5, are the ones that probably score the most. As I said, shot put is, I think, worth the least. But it's interesting to look at heptathletes because everyone has different strengths. I'm more of a speed power person, so that's why I excel in hurdles, high jump, long jump, 200 versus someone that might, not hurdle as fast but can jump really high and then can run the 800 in 2:07 or something. So it's interesting, the different strengths that people have, because obviously if you're really, really strong in the shot put, that can get you a lot of points. But, it's just interesting how it might be weighted to someone who's, really, really good in the high jump, for example, because high jump, that event itself is worth more points. So it's really confusing, but the running is worth the most, worth more than jumping. Jumping is worth more than the throwing is the easiest way I can kind of explain it.
Okay, fair enough. Well, let's stay with the event that you compete in, and that is the heptathlon. What is the best? Did you let the listeners know, what are the best things and the worst things about competing in the heptathlon?
The best things are that it really resembles, in my opinion, life. So in the heptathlon, you're going through 7 events over 2 days. And you might have some events that go really well, other events that really don't go the way you want. And that kind of resembles life. You'll have some things that go really well in life and some things that won't. And you have to figure out a way to pick yourself up and move forward. You have to find a way to learn from what just happened and move forward, whether it's good or bad. You have to be resilient. So I think that is the benefit of the heptathlon, is that it just kind of really reflects life and teaches you things about your own character and reveals things about you. And, I feel like living through my track career as a heptathlete taught me to be, really tough, really resilient, to take anything that comes my way and try to figure out the way to move forward. And I attribute all of that to my sport. And then also the benefits to doing the heptathlon is that your training looks different every day. So what I did yesterday is not what I did today for practice, and then it won't be the same tomorrow for practice. So if you're someone that likes variety, the heptathlon is definitely the way to go, because your training days will look different, so you don't really ever get bored with doing one thing, because you've got 7 things. Unless you're a guy that does a decathlon, then you have 10 things to work on. The drawbacks, I think, would be, I don't know, your body hurts all the time from doing so much. Having to, lift so much and run so much and, throw and jump. And so your body does get beat up. But I think that's a small price to pay for the rewards that you get from doing an event like this.
Most definitely, as the saying goes, the rewards definitely outweigh the risk, and definitely if you want things in life, not just in athletics, but just anything in life, you have to be willing, as you said, to pay the price, and definitely your hard work has paid off. While we're on talking about Olympics, you made your first team in Rio de Janeiro in 2016. Can you kind of just explain to us, in your opinion, what the difference is making the team for Rio in 2016 as opposed to making the team in Tokyo for 2021?
Yeah, when I made the team in Rio, it was a shock. I was a junior in college, and so I had competed my whole collegiate indoor season, my whole collegiate outdoor season. I think I had just done NCAA's a week and a half or 2 weeks earlier. And so I went to the trials thinking that I had if everything went exactly right, I had a chance to make the team. And I ended up hanging on to that 3rd spot and qualifying for my first Olympics, and it was just absolutely incredible. When I got to Rio, I was just happy to be there, because at that point, my season had just been so long, so I couldn't expect myself to go out there and medal at my first games and being probably the youngest one in the field. I was just so ecstatic to just be there competing and having the experience. But this time around, I knew I had a good chance of making the team. I felt like I was in good shape, because as a pro, I can train for the Olympic trials. I didn't have a collegiate season. I don't have a lot of wear and tear in my body, so my body felt really good going in. And I've had years of experience since making the Rio team. I've been on a couple of other senior teams that went to World Championships, so I have more experience under my belt.
In the 2016 Rio Games, you competed against a great athlete in JessicaEnnisHill, who was competitive in Beijing, and then, of course, she was one of the darlings of the Olympics in London, and, of course, her last games were in Rio. Did you ever have an opportunity to kind of talk to her off and on and just have an opportunity to just kind of get game and get knowledge from her on her approaches to not just the heptathlon, but just life in general?
No, only because in the village, everybody is kind of spread out. So, Team USA has their own building. Great Britain has their own building. China has their own building. So, I actually never saw her around the village. And then, of course, in competition, you don't want to throw off, somebody's, focus or, whatever from, just trying to have a conversation. And then plus I was, so young that I didn't want to do anything to interfere with anybody. So yeah, I did not ask any questions, but I do have a really cool picture of me, Jessica Ennis, and BrianneTheisenEaton, because that was her last meet before she retired, coming across the line from when we ran the hurdles. And that's been my laptop screensaver for a long time, because it's like 2 legends in the sport, and then me. Like the 3 of us, just like somebody caught like the best picture. And so I'm very grateful for that, since that was like the last time that I had gotten to compete with them. But I think just watching them from the outside, I think just seeing their maturity and how they handled receiving a lot of attention, and how they handled the pressure of being, one of the world's greatest athletes. And so I think I just try to model that, as I go through my career.
How could I forget about BrianneTheisenEaton, man? She was very competitive in her own right. She was how could we forget about her? Definitely representing the country of Canada. So we mentioned that. One of the things about preparation is nutrition. Is the nutrition basically the same preparing for an Olympic Games, or is it a little bit different as opposed to training for competitions, or is there much of a little bit of a leeway when it comes to that?
I think some athletes like to be on a strict diet. I think that also depends on your event a little bit too. I don't change my diet. I tend to eat pretty decent. I can't say that I eat like completely perfect, but I do eat pretty decent, and I just will keep it the same. Although in Rio they did have a McDonald's in the village, which I thought was funny and really interesting. Yeah, so in addition to the cafeteria, there was usually some other food options, but
what were some of the dining options that they had during your time in the village when you were in Rio?
So there was a huge, like, cafeteria, and they had a bunch of lines with, salad bar, chicken, pasta, rice, potatoes, bread, other miscellaneous vegetables, soup. They just try to have something for everybody just because, there's people all over the world that are, eating in this one dining hall, so they wanted to make sure that everybody could find something that they wanted to eat. And then aside from that, in a separate part of the village, that's where the McDonald's was. And surprisingly, there was always a line out the door for the McDonald's.
Wow, unbelievable! It's still amazing to me. A McDonald's at an Olympic Village. It's unreal. But I guess everybody has their vices and stuff, and everybody's not too good. Have a Big Mac and some fries or a sundae or whatever. So, big ups to McDonald's on that. What was your Tokyo experience like?
It was great. I think despite all of the, question marks surrounding like how it was going to go with no fans, I think that Japan did an amazing job putting on the Olympics, and the hospitality was great. The people of Japan are super, super nice. And so I think we all had a good time and made the most of the experience.
Awesome. Yeah, I want to ask you about the Olympic Village. Can you describe to the listeners out there just kind of like what was the experience like in the Olympic Village?
So we it's a bunch of high rises, and the big countries have their own buildings. So Team USA had the high rise completely for all things Team USA, all sports, and then Great Britain had their own high rise. Team China had their own high rise. And then like the smaller countries like, Estonia might share with, Kazakhstan or something like that. And so, when you drive into the Olympic Village, it's just, a bunch of just these high-rise buildings with the country's flag, draped outside of each floor of the building, which is kind of cool to kind of walk around and just see, which countries where. There's a giant dining hall, and that's where all countries eat. And that's open 24 hours a day. And what else? There's a weight room, like a little gift shop kind of thing. And that's it. It's pretty large. It's a pretty large area. But yeah, it's kind of like everything you need is just in that one place. The living accommodations were apartment style, so I was in a suite with 3 other people, and we each had our own room, but some apartments had 2 people to a room, so like 6 people in a suite. So yeah, the beds were made out of cardboard. I got a lot of questions about that. The beds were actually cardboard with a kind of like a thin mattress on top. So I think that was probably the only hard part about the whole thing was sleeping on a bed that wasn't, as comfortable as the ones that we have here. But other than that, it was a really great experience, and everything was so clean, and like I said, the people of Japan were just super friendly and nice.
That was a big deal. Did you get a good night's sleep on those beds considering the circumstances? Because I know athletes are all about routine and, making sure they have the proper preparation and planning and things of that nature. So were you able to have a good night's sleep preparing for your competitions? Eventually. So I personally, I have back issues, so I don't sleep comfortably on any and every bed, so I actually had to order a mattress topper to make my surface a little bit softer. But I do know that a lot of people didn't have an issue at all with the beds as they were. I think it just all depends on who you are.
But for me, after I put the mattress topper down, it was like a night and day difference.
Okay, and then one of the things that you mentioned, Kendell, was about the dining hall, and we know that's kind of like one of the crown jewels of the Olympic Village. We hear Olympians talk about the dining hall, and as you mentioned, that the dining hall was open 24/7. What were the options that were available for Tokyo?
They have a lot of different lines, so they did have like a traditional Japanese line, but then they have all the common stuff, like they had pizza every day, they had pasta, they had, chicken, shrimp, rice, potatoes, hamburgers, fries. And then you go in the Japanese line, and there's sushi, and there's miso soup, and there's, the Japanese, like jasmine rice. So it was like a good variety of stuff. I think they try to cater to everyone. Obviously, there's fruits and, salad, vegetables, and, cooler of drinks and all that. So, yeah, they pretty much just try to have things that everyone can recognize and things that everyone can eat no matter what country you're from. So, yeah, it was a 2-story dining hall, whereas in Rio, I think it was just one big, one-level dining hall. So it was kind of cool that this one had another level to accommodate all the people. And at the dining hall, they had us in cubicles. So, like, you can go and sit with, whoever you want to sit with. But if I'm sitting across the table from you, there's like some like plexiglass or whatever in between, and then if I'm sitting next to you, there's a little glass thing blocking you in. So you're pretty much sitting in cubicles, but I guess that's the only way you're allowed to really sit with your friends and being in a big area. They're trying to keep it as safe as possible. So hand sanitizer and plastic gloves, as soon as you walk in, and then once you sit down, you can take your mask off, but then you're in kind of like a cubicle thing.
What were some of the things that you enjoyed eating at the dining hall during your time at Tokyo? Well, in Tokyo, excuse me.
Yeah, I really loved the miso soup. I even had to. Hold on, my dog is barking. I loved it so much that I even had to call my mom afterwards and say, "Mom, I just had probably the best soup ever." And so I had the miso soup, and I had teriyaki chicken, and they had salmon, and so I put the teriyaki sauce on the salmon as well. So I kind of made like a teriyaki chicken and salmon over some white, jasmine rice, miso soup. So that probably was my favorite meal that I had while I was over there. I think I might have made that same thing probably like 3 times when I was over there, just because it was so good.
How did you, when not competing, did you have an opportunity to kind of to take in Tokyo culture the best way you know how? Because I know a lot of downtown Tokyo was shut down during the Olympics, and of course with the COVID situation and stuff like that. But did you have an opportunity to kind of learn the language, or maybe kind of take in any of the Japanese culture besides the food that you had?
Not at all. We were only authorized to go to the Olympic Village, our practice venue, and our competition venue. So outside of it, we could not go outside of those 3 areas. So no, didn't get to see Japan. Didn't get to do anything really in Tokyo because we were just not allowed to really leave the village. So the only part of Japan that I got to see outside the village was just what I could see from outside of the bus window as I was headed to practice, or if I was headed to the competition. So from what it looked like from the bus window, a ton of buildings, kind of like New York, but just like a larger area. Like there was just a bunch of high rises, just packed all into one place, and they were everywhere. So I didn't really even see any open like grass fields or any land or anything. It was just strictly all high rise city buildings and stuff. It looked beautiful. It looked really cool. Nobody got to really go out and explore.
How frequently did you and the athletes have to go through COVID testing, such as being in the dining hall and being in the village and going to the venues to get ready to do your competitions?
All athletes had to test. All athletes and staff had to test every single day with the saliva test. So they gave us, like our national governing bodies gave us, these little vials, and that's what we were supposed to give our saliva sample every morning before we, like, brushed our teeth, before we ate anything. As soon as you wake up, do the saliva sample, and then you have to drop it off in the morning by a certain time. So that was every single day. In addition to that, we had to take our temperature every morning with the thermometer that they gave us and answer, like, a short little questionnaire in an app that we were required to download. So we had to keep track of our health for the duration of the time that we were over there by taking our temperature, answering these questions, and then also dropping off the saliva sample every morning.
Okay, and then speaking of the Tokyo experience, so you did your thing at OlympicStadium in the Heptathlon. You had a much better showing as opposed from Rio. We're going to get to that in just a little bit, but a lot of the athletes and really just sports in general thrives on fans being at the stadium, like fans really being in the stands and cheering on their athletes and fellow countrymen and countrywomen and things of that nature. What was that like, competing and not having any fans in the stands and only having to listen to your coaches? What was that experience like?
Well, I think the multis, so the heptathletes and the decathletes, had a little bit of an advantage because we never have a packed stadium to come and watch our stuff. So I think when we first started, it was like, oh, competition as usual, like, you know, very few people in the stands, just basically the coaches. And so I think we had a little bit of an advantage in that regard, is that we're used to kind of a pretty empty of a stadium. But I will say that I noticed a difference on the events where I kind of rely on the crowd to, like, give me, like, a little boost of energy. So, like, high jump, for example, I'm someone that, like, when I get to the bigger heights, or, you know, I get to the heights that are getting close to my personal best, I usually, like, you know, get the crowd clapping to give me, like, an extra little boost of energy. So I did not have that this time around, and so that was kind of strange that I didn't have the option to, like, you know, get, like, a loud, you know, roaring clap going. Same with long jump. I mean, long jump, it's just fun to start the clap during the long jump. It's just fun to kind of get the crowd involved, and especially since the long jump runway was right there kind of by the railing of the stands. It would have been cool had it been a packed stadium, you know, to be able to kind of have that experience. But all in all, I think they did a good job. The announcer was still going. They, you know, had music going. So it didn't seem quiet in there. Obviously, other races were going on, and so, you know, the announcer was calling the other races. So there was never a point where I felt like it was really empty. So I think in that regard, they did a really good job. You know, by just still creating noise, even though there wasn't anybody in there.
I want to stay just kind of like with the atmosphere and no fans being in the stands in Tokyo, particularly at OlympicStadium for a track and field event. Did you feel that you were able? I know you mentioned that no one really shows up for the heptathlon and the decathlon events, but did you think you could concentrate? Do you think you were able to concentrate more on your events as opposed to fans being in the stands and there's so much going on and you're trying to concentrate and listen to your coaches? So do you think, with no fans being in the stands, do you think you were able to concentrate better?
Not necessarily. I think at this level, we're used to competing with a lot of noise, with a lot of distractions, and I think for me, I can always hear Petros. There's one person that I can hear, no matter if it's a crowded stadium, an empty stadium, across the stadium. I can always hear my coach, and I think that is just a testament to how, like, tuned in he and I are as coach and athlete. No matter what's going on, I can always hear his direction to the point where I don't even have to hear his voice. You know, a lot of coaches, if you watch on, like, TV or something, they're mimicking kind of what they want the athlete to do. Is they're communicating a lot through body language, just because, you know, we're so used to being in a noisy stadium to where, like, we might not be able to necessarily hear every word that you're saying, but if we can see been working with you long enough to know the body language of what you're trying to do and say and correct, then that's just as good as, like, hearing your every word. So at this Olympics, I was able to hear every word that my coach was saying, but I don't know. I understand him so well from near and far that, like, I didn't really feel like it affected my concentration one way or the other.
All right, and then let's move along now to, you mentioned about your experience in the Tokyo Olympics. Now, your first Olympic experience was in Rio in 2016. I want to ask you, in your opinion, what were the differences in competing in Rio in 2016 and for this Olympics in Tokyo?
I think just the fatigue, I would say. I mean, in Rio, I was coming off of my collegiate season, a full year in college. I did the full indoor season and the full outdoor season. And then, the Olympic trials. And so by the time I got to the Olympics, my body was just so beat up feeling. I was just so tired, just kind of dragging myself through. Whereas this time around, we were, this was only my third multi for the year. I didn't do any pentathlons indoor, so I was really coming in. So the difference of being in college and being a pro is that you can just train specifically for the big stuff. Another difference would be just years of experience. So I think back in 2016, I was still, in a way, learning a lot of the events, and my consistency wasn't really there. And so if I didn't do well in one event, that really, really put me in the hole because I wasn't sure how the other events after it were going to go. Whereas in this Olympics, my day one got off to a really, really slow start, but I didn't, freak out or anything because I knew that I had a strong long jump. I knew that I had a strong javelin on day two to put me in a better spot. And so, yes, I think in Rio it was still just, aside from not being super fresh, just kind of having not as much of an understanding or as much consistency as I do as a 26-year-old now who's been on, a couple of senior championship teams since then.
Yeah, experience definitely plays a big part, not just in sports, but with anything in life, because with experience, you have an understanding of what's going on, and then the vision's pretty clear, and you can kind of know what you need to do in order to make those corrections, and you definitely made a big corrections. You really improved because when you competed in Rio in 2016, you finished in 17th, and with it in Tokyo, you finished 5th. So that's a big accomplishment right there. And I'm looking at the final results right here. You're welcome. KatarinaJohnsonThompson, who represents Great Britain, she finished 6th in the heptathlon in Rio in 2016. She did not finish in this competition, of course, due to a calf injury that she suffered. I know the Olympic atmosphere for events is pretty competitive, but did you have an opportunity to kind of briefly talk to Katarina, or any of the athletes have an opportunity to just kind of see her and just wish her well and things of that nature?
I don't know. For me, my heat was running after her, so I was watching her on a screen back in the warm-up area, and I saw her heat run, and then they brought us out right after. So I didn't see her really. The people that were in that race with her, I'm sure they, had some encouraging words, told her how, they felt bad or I'm sorry, whatever. But I didn't see her until we were leaving the stadium, and she was, walking with her, her medical staff and her coach. And I was, trying to catch her bus back to the village. It was super late at night. And I just, tapped her on the shoulder and, said that I'm, sorry that happened. And, but, again, this was, after 11 p.m., so I know both of us, were so tired, so I didn't, stay there and have a conversation. But, yeah, we were definitely really bummed to see that race and her pull out, because obviously, we're all in the multi-world. We all cheer for each other, and, don't see anyone have that, especially have an injury happen to where they have to stop. So, yeah, definitely felt bad about that.
NafiThiam was the Olympic champion in the heptathlon in 2016 in Rio, and she repeats as Olympic champion in Tokyo. She would win the gold medal, and then the Netherlands would take silver and the bronze. Anouk Vetter would win the silver medal, and Emma Osterwegel would win the bronze. And again, you came in 5th, so Kendell, you were almost there. You had a shot at it right there. Of course, the final event in the heptathlon is always a great one, which is the 800 meters. And at the end, we saw Nafi when she found out she won the gold medal and she got her flag and things of that nature, did you have an opportunity to kind of, speak briefly with her and just, tell her congratulations as well as the other winners in the competition?
Oh, yeah. I mean, whenever we finish, like, all the heptathletes, like, we'll hug and say congratulations and all of that. And then we actually, we all take a victory lap together, which is different from the other events. The other events, if you take a victory lap, it's usually just the medalist. But for the heptathlon decathlon, it's like tradition that we all go on the lap together because it's like we brought each other through this, like these grueling 2 days, and we all battled it out together. So, so there was definitely a lot of like smiles and laughs and hugs with everyone after we finished.
Yeah, that's awesome because that's like one of my favorite things, not just in sports, but particularly in track and field, to get a chance to see all the athletes, pose with their flags and come take a picture together. That's always fun. I want to ask you about altitude for a moment. Was the air? Do you think what was the difference between the air quality from Rio as opposed to Tokyo?
I didn't really notice the air quality, but I mean, it is very, very humid in Tokyo, which is something I don't know that I was prepared for. I heard it was humid, but I wasn't prepared for that level of humidity because, I mean, I'm from Georgia, so I'm used to humidity, but that was even worse than what I'm used to being from here. So I think that was probably the main difference. In Rio, I don't remember the temperature, getting in the way of anything, whereas, like, here it was insanely in Tokyo is insanely warm and humid to where, like, we were wearing ice vests, constantly chugging electrolytes and water. And even still, one of the girls at the very end got, really sick from the heat. So, I think that was probably the biggest difference this Olympics is just trying to stay cool and stay hydrated for the conditions.
Another thing was American athletes, when they arrived in Tokyo, they had to get used to the time difference. How many days did it take you to get used to get your body adjusted to the time? Because you lost a lot of hours of sleep.
Right. Yeah, it took about 3 or 4 days for me to start to feel normal. Because you're right, yeah, it's like 13 hours from Georgia time. So it took a minute to start to actually feel normal, but but once I got on schedule, it was pretty good. And I think it was that way pretty much on average for any athlete. Like some of my other friends on the team were like, I still feel so tired, like when they first arrived. And I was like, it took me like 3 or 4 days. And so I think it's a good thing that we were able to go out there so early because you definitely do need that time to get acclimated.
Yeah, that's definitely a major jet lag right there. So it was good that you got several days to kind of get your body acclimated and get used to it so you could, be your best to prepare for the competition. I know that you arrived to Tokyo after the opening ceremonies. Did you stay for the closing ceremonies?
Nope, I had a day or two before closing ceremonies because we have to leave 48 hours after our competition concludes.
Okay, yeah, see, I did hear about that, but I didn't know if you happened to stay or whatever. I heard about that rule, but I didn't know with track and field being so close to the closing ceremonies, I didn't know if you had stayed. Okay, but nevertheless,
no,
I mean, it was.
I'm sorry. Oh, I just said some people got to stay, if it was within their 48 hours. So there were track people at the closing, but my competition ended, too far in advance for me to stay.
Fair enough. And then give me first of all, I want to add, this is a two-part question. My first question is, give me some words to describe your Olympic experience in Rio de Janeiro, and give me some words to describe your Olympic experience in Tokyo.
In Rio, I would say intimidating. I would say fun. It was fun. And challenging. And then in Tokyo, I would say exciting, unique, and was exciting. It was unique, and I don't know how to describe it. Other than like, I was more confident this time around, so I don't know how to encapsulate that. But like, exciting, unique, and I was just more confident this time.
I want to ask you just, I know the Olympics as far as track and field is concerned is like the creme de la creme and things of that nature, but what are the differences between competing at a World Championships as opposed to competing at an Olympics?
The stats are higher on Olympic years just because they don't come around as often. So the World Championships come around every other year. So, yes, people still want to make that team, and yes, it's still a huge championship. But, you know, they're like, okay, if I don't make it, and, you know, in this year, it's not, you know, another 3 or 4 years of waiting. It's like, okay, I just have to wait, you know, another year or two. So that's one of the differences. Another difference is World Championships is just track and field, whereas the Olympics is all sport. So when we go to these meets, it's just track and field, you know, in every country around the world versus, like, every sport in every country around the world. So I guess in that regard, tiny bit smaller, but still a huge championship for us track and field athletes.
Awesome to hear. You know, one of the things about track and field is pay. Like a lot of, you know, we hear some athletes that are sponsored athletes. They have different tennis shoe companies as well as also a lot of food companies that will sponsor the athletes and things of that nature. I want to ask you, are athletes paid to be in the Olympics, and are athletes paid to participate in the World Championships?
No, we aren't paid to be at the Olympics, but the athletes that do have a shoe contract usually have some you know, bonuses and things that are added if we do make an Olympic team, or if we, you know, place well or medal. All of that kind of ties back into like the stipulations in your contract. So yeah, you're not paid by anyone to be there, but you know, your performance there can equate to some amount of money if you're signed with like a shoe company. And then also you get, you know, funding from USATF for making the team, and but we're not like necessarily paid for being in the Olympics or World Championships. And World Championships actually has more prize money than the Olympics. In the Olympics, you get paid for the top 3, so like the medal positions, whereas World Championships, they pay top 8 or top 10 or something like that. So more, I guess, money-making opportunities for World Championships. But, you know, if you do make an Olympic team, you can, you know, depending on what's in your contract, can make some more money that way.
Awesome. I was always curious about that because I know money's has always been tight in track and field. It's getting a little bit better with more opportunities and stuff. So I was kind of curious about that with Olympics and World Championships and things of that nature. Well, you heard it from her. She's Kendell Williams. She placed 12th. She placed 12th in the Heptathlon at the 2016 Summer Olympics in Rio de Janeiro, and she had a much better showing in Tokyo, placing 5th. Before we let you go, where can people find you on social media?
So mainly on Instagram. If you go to KDUBB_100, you will find my Instagram page.
Awesome, and you heard it from her. She's Kendell Williams. She's an Olympian. Kendell, thank you so much once again.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into the channel. Remember to click like, share, and subscribe, and thank you for watching.